It started as something small, just a flippant comment here and there, the kind couples sometimes toss around when the air is too still, the silence too heavy. The first time she said it, we were on the couch, her head half buried in her phone, eyes flicking upward only to deliver the punchline. "Can we break up already?" she muttered, barely lifting her voice above the TV. I looked at her, unsure if I'd misheard, and she smirked. "Kidding," she added quickly, leaning over to kiss my cheek like she hadn't just thrown a grenade into the room. I laughed, though it didn't come naturally. I told myself it was a joke, just one of those odd things people say without meaning anything by it. But a week later, we were in line at the grocery store, and I made some offhand remark about the cereal she picked. Without missing a beat, she turned to me and sighed dramatically. "God, maybe we really should break up. Can you imagine your life without me micromanaging your breakfast choices?" The older woman in front of us raised her eyebrows. I forced a chuckle, smiled politely, and brushed it off again. The moment passed, like they all seemed to. But there was a pattern forming, one I pretended not to see. Over the next month, her jokes about ending things became a regular feature in our conversations. Each time they came out, they did so a little more casually, with a sharper edge. Once, when I forgot to do the laundry, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're making single life sound better and better." Another time, she sent a photo of an apartment listing to our group chat with the caption, "My escape plan if he forgets the trash again." Her friends laughed. I didn't. I asked her one night, while we were brushing our teeth, what all these breakup jokes meant. She looked at me in the mirror, toothbrush in hand. "Relax," she said, toothpaste bubbling at the corners of her mouth. "You're so sensitive. It's just banter." But it didn't feel like banter. It felt like a slow-motion exit ramp she was building for herself, brick by brick, joke by joke. And I, like a fool, kept pretending it was all harmless. I didn't want to be the guy who couldn't take a joke, so I swallowed it all. What made it worse was the way she'd double back the next day. Every time I pulled away slightly, every time I got a little too quiet or distant, she'd switch gears. She'd kiss me a little longer, make breakfast without me asking, even leave handwritten notes on the kitchen counter with things like, "Love you more than coffee." These gestures confused me more than the jokes hurt. It kept me in this limbo. Was she just quirky, or was she testing how much I'd tolerate? The whiplash of tenderness and mockery chipped away at something fundamental. I stopped initiating conversations about the future. I hesitated before sharing work updates or asking about her day. I noticed how often I second-guessed whether to hold her hand in public. The closeness we once shared had turned into performance art, awkward, staged, mechanical. I didn't confide in friends, partly out of embarrassment, but also because I wasn't sure what to say. What do you tell someone? "My wife keeps joking about leaving me, and I think she might mean it, but I'm not sure, because yesterday she bought me my favorite socks for no reason." It sounds insane when you say it out loud, so I kept it to myself, hoping it would pass like a cold front, brief, irritating, but ultimately forgettable. But it didn't pass. It escalated. She started making lists, on her phone, on scraps of paper she left on the coffee table. "Things I'd take if I ever moved out," one of them said. I read it by accident one morning while cleaning. I didn't bring it up. I just put the paper back where I found it and walked away. Then came the social media phase. She'd share memes about escaping emotionally unavailable men or post vague captions like, "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." Comments rolled in from her followers, most of them single women who seemed to delight in the digital ambiguity. Preach. Girl, same. She never tagged me. I never responded. I thought about confronting her again, about saying, directly, "If you're that unhappy, just say it." But I didn't, because part of me still wanted to believe that maybe this was just a weird phase, that she didn't really mean it, that this was her version of venting, albeit in the most disorienting way possible. The worst part? She still held my hand when we watched movies, still fell asleep on my chest, still texted me, "Drive safe, handsome," when I left for work. The dissonance was unbearable. It made every moment feel fragile, like a vase balanced on a ledge. I was afraid to breathe near it. Then came the Friday night dinner with her friends. We were at a bistro downtown, everyone laughing over cocktails and overpriced entrees. Her friend Dana was talking about her recent breakup, and without any prompting, my wife chimed in with, "Honestly, sometimes I wish I had the guts to do that." She glanced sideways at me. The whole table laughed, except for one guy at the end who shot me a look, half sympathy, half confusion. I smiled and drank my wine. That night, while she showered, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time I felt wanted, not just tolerated. I couldn't. Not clearly. I should have said something then. Should have told her the jokes weren't jokes anymore, that they were cutting deeper every time, that they made me feel disposable. But I didn't, because I already knew the truth. She was laying down breadcrumbs, and I was pretending it was a game. But deep down, I knew. She wanted out. She just didn't want to be the one to say it first. And I was too tired to keep pretending it was all just humor. I was too tired to keep making room for someone who treated our relationship like a rehearsal for goodbye. The following message she'd send would give me the clarity I hadn't been brave enough to take for myself. And this time, I wasn't going to play along. It was a Thursday, the kind of day that moves without incident. Just meetings, emails, and a lunch that tasted like cardboard. I had a late client call, so I stayed at the office longer than usual. The room was quiet, bathed in artificial light, the hum of the air conditioning louder than it should have been. I remember reaching for my phone almost absent-mindedly, more out of habit than anything urgent. That's when I saw it. A message preview. From her. I think we need to break up. No emojis or follow-up. Nothing to soften the blow. Just that sentence. 7 words that landed like a gavel, final and sharp. I stared at the screen, waiting for another bubble to appear, something else to explain, reframe, or walk back. But the dots didn't dance. I read it again, slower this time, like my brain didn't quite believe what my eyes were already digesting. She'd said things like that before. Many times, in fact. But those were always in person, layered with sarcasm or buried inside banter. This felt different. Something about the delivery, the timing, the silence that followed, made it feel settled. Final. I sat still, letting the moment stretch. Across the room, my reflection in the window looked calm. Too calm. As if part of me had already known this was inevitable. There was no sinking sensation in my stomach. Just a quiet, undeniable awareness that a line had finally been drawn. I pressed the power button on my phone, causing the screen to turn black for just a second, then switched it back on. The message was still there. Real. Permanent. She hadn't called. She hadn't added, "Let's talk," or "We need to discuss this." There wasn't even a courtesy, "I'm sorry." And maybe that's what clarified everything. There was no affection behind those words. Only detachment. I took a screenshot. Then I opened the keyboard, typed a single sentence, and hit send. Agreed. Your stuff will be on the porch in an hour. I stared at my reply for a moment, as if it belonged to someone else. There was no anger in it. Just the same kind of blunt closure she'd sent me. It felt surgical, precise, like cutting a wire you've studied for hours, knowing exactly where to slice. I stood up, tucked my laptop into my bag, and left the office without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive home was silent. Headlights gliding across asphalt, my fingers resting loosely on the steering wheel. Every red light gave me time to rehearse what I'd say if she called. But she didn't. No buzzing phone. No question marks sent in panic. It was as if she really meant it. And that made everything simpler. I wasn't going to drag this out. I wasn't going to pretend there was more to say. She sent a message that required no further conversation. So I gave her exactly what she asked for. I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a minute, watching the lights inside the house blink softly through the windows. Everything looked the same, but everything had already changed. Walking in felt strange. The hallway seemed colder. The shoes by the door still sat in their usual spot. A faint vanilla scent from one of her candles lingered in the air, sweet and out of place. I went straight to the closet. Each shelf, each drawer became a checklist. I started with her jackets, the beige one she wore on rainy days, the leather one she claimed was too stiff but kept anyway. Into a plastic container they went. Then came the dresses, blouses, skirts, and that sweatshirt she always wore when she got off work, the one with the frayed cuffs. Folded, packed, sealed. I moved through the rooms as if I were cataloging a museum exhibit. The bathroom was next, drawer after drawer of cosmetics, hair ties, and lotions with French labels. I placed them in separate bags, making sure nothing spilled. I found her favorite perfume, the one she wore on our first anniversary, and paused for a beat. Then into the box it went. I passed our bookshelf and pulled out the novels she marked with sticky tabs. Her handwriting on the margins now felt foreign. I didn't read them. They joined the rest. The office had her documents, certificates, tax folders, even a small notebook filled with business ideas she once shared with enthusiasm. All organized, all carefully labeled. Every photograph featuring both of us, vacations, weddings, weekends at the lake. I slipped into a manila envelope. I wasn't going to keep a single one. I wasn't going to hold on to what no longer belonged to me. I found a framed picture from our honeymoon, us standing on a mountain trail, her head against my shoulder. For a second, the memory tried to pull me back. But I blinked, took the frame apart, slid the photo into a sleeve, and sealed it away with the others. By the time I was done, there were 3 large containers and 1 box of smaller items. Each is neatly packed. No chaos. Just order. I stacked everything by the door and took a step back. Then I picked up my phone, opened the camera, and took a photo of the boxes arranged neatly on the porch. My fingers moved quickly. Pick up before 2000 hours or send a delivery address. After that, it goes to storage in your name. Message sent. I looked at the clock. 1 hour. Just like I said. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table. The house felt quieter than ever, but for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. And then, just as expected, her messages started coming in. The first message hit my phone just 4 minutes after I'd sent the photo of her boxes on the porch. Wait, I was joking. Then another. Seriously? Come on. This is insane. The tone shifted quickly. Amusement faded. Uncertainty took its place. I read them as they came, one after another. Longer, more frantic each time, but I didn't reply. I didn't even type a single word in response. My silence was louder than anything I could have said. Instead, I walked over to the kitchen counter, opened the drawer where we kept the utility passwords and access notes, and started making changes. The Wi-Fi network had consistently been named after one of her favorite TV shows. I logged into the router and renamed it something generic. Then, set a new, randomly generated password. Copied it down. Moved on. Streaming services came next. We had profiles set up together, hers filled with pastel dramas and dating shows I'd never touch. I removed her access from the shared account, then reset the master login on each platform, one by one. I handled it clinically, like updating a company system after an employee resignation. I reached for the tablet we used to sync our calendars, signed out of the joint iCloud account, and transferred the contents I needed to my personal storage. Then, I purged the device and placed it in the drawer. No emotion, just execution. Next came the finances. We had a joint savings account that we contributed to sporadically. It wasn't huge, but it mattered. I transferred my portion to a new account I'd opened quietly a few weeks ago, an account with no shared access, no visibility. I left the remainder untouched, equal to what she'd added over time. I sorted through the insurance policies, the car registration, even the subscriptions for things like grocery deliveries and gym memberships. Wherever her name sat beside mine, I started the process of separating them. Invoices, contracts, monthly fees, all flagged for division. Once I'd finished, I drafted a short, clear document. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional. Just a preliminary outline of who kept what services were now individual, and what remained to be discussed legally. I attached it in an email titled Separation Draft. Please review. Then I copied my attorney, the same one I'd consulted a month ago when the jokes started to sound like instructions. The subject line was simple. The message body is even simpler. Attached are the initial steps to formally close joint matters. Please let me know if you'd prefer any adjustments. This avoids delays. No accusations, just business and facts. She was still messaging while I typed. My phone buzzed 3 times in a row on the countertop. Are you seriously ignoring me now? This was a joke. You can't just throw everything away. Pick up your damn phone. I reached for the volume button and silenced the notifications. It wasn't rage driving me, it was relief. I was moving through these tasks like someone waking up from a long dream, remembering where they were before it started. Each click, each update, each password changed was a reclaiming of space I hadn't realized I'd surrendered. I took a moment to breathe, then walked outside. The air was cool, dusk settling slowly into the yard. The containers sat neatly where I'd left them, right on the porch under the motion light. They looked almost like luggage waiting for a cab. Practical, defined, ready to go. I arranged them in a tighter row, took another photo, and sent it with a new message. Final pickup window. Today before 2000 hours. After that, items will be transferred to storage. Contract will be in your name. I didn't ask for acknowledgement. This was her deadline, even if she hadn't realized she'd created it. Inside, I poured myself a drink. Nothing substantial. Just something to settle the restlessness that still buzzed through my muscles. The house felt different now. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe in my own space again. She didn't stop. More messages kept arriving, each one a shift in tone. First indignant, then pleading, then angry again. She tried every door she'd used before. Guilt, charm, sarcasm, sentiment. Okay, I get it. You're trying to make a point. I hear you. Can we just talk like adults? This is overkill. You always take things too far. I didn't mean it. You know I didn't. Stop acting like I did. But this wasn't about acting. It was about listening. And I had heard her loud and clear. I sat down at the dining table, that long wooden slab we once filled with guests, birthday cakes, and late-night takeout. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Every detail from the last 2 months passed through my mind like testimony. Those little jokes, the tossed-out phrases, the smirks after she'd test the edge of her just kidding threats. None of it had been funny. None of it had been accidental. She wasn't here to watch me work through this, and maybe that was for the best. She always thrived on reaction, needed a stage, an audience. Silence, on the other hand, had always unnerved her. And this time, I was giving her the one thing she never expected, total stillness. As the clock crept toward 8 p.m., the sky turned violet outside. No headlights in the driveway. Just more messages blinking behind a locked screen. At 7:58 p.m., she tried calling. I let it ring until the screen went dark. I leaned back in the chair, finished my drink, and stared out the window. The porch light flickered once, then held steady. Deadline reached. The next move would be mine, and it would be silent, efficient. By 8:05 p.m., the porch light was still on. The boxes sat where I left them, untouched. Her name still hadn't appeared on the driveway cameras. There was no car. No sign she'd even attempted to collect her things. Inside, the house remained still. I moved to the hallway and stood at the entrance, observing the blank space she used to fill. No purse was thrown onto the chair. That everyday chaos was gone. And in its place, peace. I opened the storage service app, the one I'd bookmarked earlier. Within a few minutes, I had everything scheduled. Tomorrow morning, a van will come to collect the containers. The contract would list her name, contact number, and email address. A digital receipt would be sent to both of us, and the monthly bill would land squarely on her plate. When the confirmation appeared, I felt a strange calm. It wasn't a victory. It was closure. At 9:12 p.m., headlights finally lit the corner of the street. A black car rolled to a slow stop, idling at the curb before the back door opened. She stepped out wearing the same coat she had worn on our last weekend getaway, the one she used to say made her feel elegant. It looked foreign now. She stood there, hands at her sides, eyes fixed on the containers. For a few seconds, she remained frozen, like she expected them to vanish if she stared long enough. Then she approached, slowly, as if they might explode. I watched through the front window. She reached for the top bin and ran her fingers over the label I'd written. Her name, in bold letters. Everything inside had been organized deliberately, categorized, and packed with care, far more than she likely anticipated. She glanced toward the door, then tried the handle. The lock clicked, red light. She pressed it again, another refusal. I opened the app and checked the lock logs. She'd entered her old code. Twice. The one I reset 3 hours earlier. A knock followed. One firm hit, then another, louder this time. I walked to the entrance and opened the door halfway. Left the chain engaged. Her expression twisted between disbelief and nervous amusement. "You changed the code?" she asked, voice slightly elevated, too sharp to be casual. I nodded. "You're no longer listed." She blinked, obviously searching for an angle that might reset the situation. "Okay, come on. This is extreme. You seriously locked me out?" I met her stare without blinking. "You said we should break up." I agreed. She scoffed and stepped closer. It was sarcasm. "You knew that." I didn't budge. "You said it straight." No smile. "You meant it, or you wanted me to think you did." Either way, I accepted the offer. Her brow furrowed. "This is childish." "No," I said quietly. "This is deliberate." She tried again. "Let me in. We can talk about this like rational adults." I pointed toward the containers. Your things are there. The rest is covered in the email I sent. Any clarifications can go through the lawyer copied on it. She crossed her arms. You're being ridiculous. Then we're finally even, I replied. Her voice rose. You didn't even ask me what I meant. You just assumed everything. You sent me a sentence. A simple one. I chose to honor it. She paused, eyes flicking past me into the house like she was looking for something familiar to grab hold of. But it was gone. The traces had already been scrubbed. No shoes by the mat. Seriously? She tried again. You're really doing this? Over one text? I unhooked the chain and opened the door fully, motioning to the containers. This isn't about a message. It's about months of small cuts. I let them bleed without saying anything. Today, I stopped pretending I was fine. She stood silent. I added, you were playing. I stopped. She exhaled and moved closer. You're punishing me. You know that, right? No, I said, calm and steady. I'm just done negotiating my dignity. Her face shifted. Anger cracked into something softer, pleading, maybe. She looked past me again, scanning for the version of me that used to fold during conflict. That guy had left when I hit send 3 hours ago. I was testing you, she admitted, her voice finally lowering. I stepped aside and gestured again toward her things. I don't take exams in my own home. She looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. I said something dumb, and now you're ending everything? No, I corrected. You ended it. I'm just taking your word for it. She took a breath like she might protest again, but stopped herself. Her hand hovered over the doorframe before dropping to her side. I didn't think you'd actually follow through, she said finally, quiet now. Then maybe the joke wasn't as funny as you thought. She looked down at the containers. I don't have a place to take them right now. Then they'll be picked up at 9 a.m., I replied. The contract's in your name. Details were sent to your inbox. Her eyes welled. Whether from frustration or genuine emotion, I couldn't say. You really mean this? I do. There was nothing left to add. I stepped back inside and closed the door. Just a final, heavy click. She stood on the porch for a long time after the door shut. I could see the shadow of her figure through the frosted window near the lock, motionless at first, then shifting slightly as she paced back and forth. There were no more knocks, just silence. And then, eventually, footsteps descended the stairs and faded into the distance toward the sidewalk. From the kitchen, I watched the car pull away. It didn't race off. It rolled slowly down the street, brake lights glowing faintly as it disappeared around the corner. I didn't move right away. For a few minutes, I stayed by the window, holding a cup of water I'd barely touched. My fingers curled around the ceramic like it anchored me to the floor. My thoughts, for the first time in weeks, weren't rushing. They stretched long and steady, like the space in the hallway she used to fill. By 9 o'clock the next morning, the storage crew arrived precisely on time. 2 men, efficient and expressionless, loaded the containers without question. I handed them the printed contract and pointed out the email thread with her contact information. It was all business. No hesitation. As the van door slammed shut and they pulled away, I felt a shift in the air, slight, almost imperceptible, but real. I checked my phone. There it was, a fresh message from her. Let's talk. I think this went way too far. Just flat text, missing all the usual affectations. As if she had finally realized the weight behind what she'd kicked loose. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. I wasn't playing. From here forward, legal channels only. I tapped send. Then I archived the conversation thread. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like completing something unfinished. There were still tasks to finalize, including utilities, paperwork, and mail forwarding. But the emotional labor had already been done. The goodbye had happened, not with a bang or a collapse, but with a precise, intentional quiet. Later that afternoon, I cleared out the hallway closet. There were still a few stray items, a scarf that fell behind a storage box, an old umbrella she never liked. I packed them into a padded envelope and dropped them at a courier drop-off on the way to work. One final delivery. At home, I walked through the rooms like I was seeing them again for the first time. The living room felt wider. The couch is no longer angled to face her favorite corner. The throw blanket she'd always tugged over her lap had already been boxed. Even the small tray where she used to leave her rings and earrings had been wiped clean. There were quiet echoes in these spaces, but none carried pain. They sounded more like the hush of clarity after a long, confusing storm. Even the kitchen, her domain, had lost its territorial edge. The coffee mugs lined the shelf like soldiers, orderly and unclaimed. The fridge had more space. I restocked it that night with precisely what I liked, nothing more. I slept with the window open. The sheets are cool against my skin. There were no shifting movements beside me. In the morning, I woke early. The light through the blinds painted lines across the floor. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and leaned against the counter. The hallway stretched quietly behind me. I looked at the clean floor where her heels used to sit in a chaotic pile. That mess had annoyed me endlessly. Strange how empty space could now feel like a reward. I took a slow sip, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. The final thought came like a whisper, steady and undeniable. When your boundaries are turned into games, the only real power is to stop playing. I'd spent months living in a slow erosion, rationalizing sarcasm as coping, labeling passive aggression as personality. But relationships aren't improv shows. They aren't meant to be built on punchlines. And when someone turns affection into satire, the most mature response isn't confrontation. It's exit. With my cup still half full, I stepped toward the window. Outside, the sun stretched over the porch, lighting up the exact spot where her boxes had stood the night before. Now there was nothing there. And that emptiness, it felt like a beginning.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.